Excel. So now we also have Chris Brown on the sofa. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Chrissy.
How are you?
I'm very good. I'm really happy about this year. Yes, it
Looking
is.
forward to it.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Okay, so tell me what you thought about the interviews.
Well, the interviews just had there, I thought they were very interesting, very good. Setting goals, the reason why people set goals. But I realised one thing he kept saying is, I try. And I tend to fail on doing this and fail to do on that. And there's a whole catalyst of reasons why we set these goals. At the beginning of the year, we want to start a new page, get rid of the old one, completely clean and live a new life. But what happens, it takes about 2 weeks and we fall back into the old one, right? Many reasons behind that. Now, think about it. Just setting a goal in itself. You've got to know what type of goal you're going to set, right? So you've got to have that clearly in your mind. Number two on that is sometimes we set goals that are not realistic, much to what Dr. Michael was saying earlier on. They're not realistic goals. And we try and reach for these unrealistic goals. We get demotivated because we set them way too far ahead or
Too many of them.
Too many of them. And again, that's exactly where I was going to go.
You said it. Sorry.
Yeah, because we do. We set too many of them. We need to stick to one goal specifically, work that out, short term, medium, long term. To do on that. And there's a whole catalyst of reasons why we set these goals. At the beginning of the year, we want to start a new page, get rid of the old one, completely clean and live a new life. But what happens, it takes about 2 weeks and we fall back into the old one, right? Many reasons behind that. Now, think about it. Just setting a goal in itself. You've got to know what type of goal you're going to set, right? So you've got to have that clearly in your mind. Number two on that is sometimes we set goals that are not realistic, much to what Dr. Michael was saying earlier on. They're not realistic goals. And we try and reach for these unrealistic goals. We get demotivated because we set them way too far ahead or
Too many of them.
Too many of them. And again, that's exactly where I was going to go.
You said it.
We always get it, don't we?
I'm nicking his point, sorry.
Yeah, because we do. We set too many of them. We need to stick to one goal specifically, work that out, short term, medium, long term. Right, and work at it bit by bit, one goal. But I'll tell you one thing that came up all the time, which was the one where they were talking about smoking.
Yeah.
And then they were talking about
nodding away and
drinking. Yeah, they're talking about drinking. Now think about this. Let's set this scenario up. Let's say Michael, yourself, right? Okay, myself, right? And let's say, all right, Michael drinks. Yeah, I drink, and we go out all the time. We've got a group of friends who drink. And they all drink. And then I decided all of a sudden that this year I'm going to stop drinking. So I've stopped drinking. But to be honest, I've got to be supported by the group around me. So before, Mark used to say, Chris, you're going to come for a drink and this, that, and the other. And I go, no, not this time. I'll come along and I'll have a juice alone. A little while after, I do it again. A little while after that, I do it again. And Michael thinks, well, I'm not going to ask Chris no more. He's no fun. He doesn't drink. So it's also changing the environment around you that supports what you actually do, because you're going to go back into it. Same with your diets. Well, all of a sudden you want to lose weight, but there you go, sitting right in the cake shop, right, talking about this, that, and go shopping with all your friends and all that, and yeah, I'll have a bit of this, a bit of that. Go on, have it. You've got those group of people around you who's going to encourage you to do it at one point or another. Breaks it, weakens, you're back on the same thing. 2 weeks after. 2 weeks after. So you've got to be very strong about it. If you're going to make that change, you've got to be prepared that you've got to make the change of those things around you that put you in that position as well.
There was also that lady as well that she was saying that she was able to stop smoking immediately because she found that she was pregnant. So the motivation was really strong for her.
Absolutely. Again, it's going back to what we were saying earlier, maybe something about values in life. So it was probably more important for her to be sort of nurturing, caring towards her unborn child and towards her own body as well. So the motivation based on value was probably the thing that helped her to decide to stop smoking. The other lady who was trying to give up smoking as well actually said, well, you know, I'm not very successful at it because, you know, it's relaxing and it helps me de-stress. We must understand that these sorts of behaviours and bad habits, if you like, have a function. You know, we're intelligent human beings. We don't do anything if there isn't a gain. So we need to understand that, okay, we're going to give up smoking, but, you know, how are you going to cope with feeling stressed, actually, if you don't smoke anymore?
You have to already know what you're going to do to
exactly, as we were saying earlier, to manage those uncomfortable feelings. So it's very telling what the people on the street there were saying. You know, there's something very functional about behaviours, and if you're not willing to, you know, manage those feelings in another way, then you're not going to give up that behaviour.
And there's that side as well, back to what you said, supporting that, there's that, as we talked earlier on, that sort of pleasure principle, whereas somebody all of a sudden they've had, let's say, a heart attack. They've had a heart attack. Straight away, they're training. They're eating the right things. They're getting fit. They're making sure they don't get into it. But if they didn't have that situation happen, they wouldn't have done it. It would have been hard to hit their goal. And it could be anything like that. To do with your health particularly, you find a lot of people, they're in the gym all the time. Oh, what motivated you? Oh, this is what happened to me, or that happened to me, or this happened, or I'm overweight now and they said this, that and the other. You know? So as pleasure principles, some things push us into that direction, which is quite good.
Well, the only thing is sometimes you might not get a chance, because if you're really not looking after your health and you have a heart attack, that could be it.
That's the
worrying thing about it. It's like, why do we have to kind of hit our face against a brick wall before we actually
Well, that's something. It, isn't it? And we don't necessarily want to sort of wait for something to happen as well, but which is a trigger and a motivating factor. I mean, again, just going back onto this values principle, it is about, you know, we don't need anything to be in place or anyone to be in place to identify and act on our values. So without the heart attack happening, we can still think about, you know, self-care and looking after ourselves.
Exactly.
But it isn't until these events that people start to wake up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, going back to what you said earlier, Chris, there about, you know, sort of, you know, having people around you, you know, supporting you, for instance, is a major factor in all this. And the research tells us that if we make a kind of public display of our commitment, so we let people know that we're going to be doing this, and also, you know, talking through some of the obstacles that may arise with them around that we're more likely to stick to our goals as well.
Yes.
And if it isn't that we can tell other people, then it may be that we just make a commitment to ourselves. So, you know, writing it down and
that's a good idea, telling everyone, because it's quite embarrassing if you don't stick to it, because then everyone knows.
Well, exactly.
Failure.
That's the guy who didn't stick to it. That's the woman who didn't stick
That's
to
quite
it.
interesting, though. That's a good idea.
It's a way of making yourself accountable. Accountable to others, accountable to yourself at the same time. It's very important. Very important. But sometimes you'd find before you've made that goal, you don't want to tell anybody. Why? Because you've already given up in your head. You think, well, what if? And the what if is saying, well, I'm not going to do it. So you've got to actually get out there and say,
One of the other things that came through on the VT there from the street was how a woman was sort of, you know, trying to give up smoking, I think, but, you know, she would just say that I'm lazy, and she was beating herself up, really. So, you know, again, going back to the principle that we need to think about the obstacles that get in the way of us meeting our goals and bringing on the reality we want for ourselves. So these obstacles may be both sort of internal to us and external. So as you were saying, externally, it might be about the environment around us, friends and so forth. But it may be, you know, the resources we have or don't have. If we want to lose weight, well, and exercise at the gym, is there a gym you can go to? You know, we need to think about whether, you know, have we got the money in the bank to join a gym, this kind of thing. So we need to think about those obstacles, but also the internal ones, which may be to do with our thoughts. So, you know, what sort of things are you telling yourself, and or expectations are you setting yourself? Are these going to get in the way? If you try and give up smoking and just beat yourself up every time you know, even think about a cigarette, then you're not going to make any progress with that, because you undermine your confidence and you're going to reach for a cigarette to feel better.
I mean, a lot of people are actually searching for new life because they're fed up with what happened last year. It might be their financial situation. It might be their relationship, as mentioned earlier on. It might be a divorce situation, whatever. But these areas, people have actually got to rethink, well, if that's how my life was last year, am I going to carry on with it this year? So I want a new life. I've got to make a new start. So you've got to consciously take on board what was actually said and do something about it. Don't just talk about it. Take action and do something about it.
That's why divorce rates are quite high this time of year, isn't it?
Well,
around
there you
Christmas
go.
and New Year, because people just had enough maybe, and they're saying, okay, I don't want to go into the New Year with the same old problems.
Right.
So then,
but again, some of our relationships are there as a way to cope. We may be in a relationship, even though it's unsatisfying, to avoid being single or avoid not finding another. So we need to think about how we're going to manage those feelings. Yeah, you want to get out of a relationship, but we need to you know, we need to sort of bridge the gap between where we are and where we want to be. And in order to do that, we need to step out of our comfort zone. It's just that simple, and experience the inherent discomfort in doing that act. So we need to tool up with, you know, helpful coping mechanisms and go out there and meet our goals, absolutely. Rather than just talking about it. Action is important. There's no point talking about it. It's all about action. As we said, I want to lose weight. Well, how are you going to do that and put the action in place? Absolutely.
Exactly. To have the things you never had, you've got to do the things you never done.
Chris, you had some points as well that you brought along, didn't you?
I had those points. As I just said, to have things you never had, you've got to do the things you never done. So, one, you've got to look at what have you been doing the same all the way through each year, repeating this. Why have you actually failed on your last goal when you set it? Because we set these New Year's resolution. Put my teeth in again. Right. Set these New Year's resolution, similar to the one before. Same thing's going to happen. So you've got to go back and work out, well, what did I do then that I need to change to make things happen? right? What is my routine in life? And why, just to mention, comfort zone.
Yeah.
There's a reason behind why people actually sit in their comfort zones. And once they actually find out that reason, chances are they'll be able to break out of it.
Yeah. What about rewarding yourself as well? Because obviously,
well, we're not
you have to keep yourself going. You're doing really well, and then starting to feel a bit, I don't know if I can continue with this. Should you reward yourself? Because we sort of read about it all the time.
Absolutely. You may have a different opinion, but the research tells us that if we reward ourselves, we are more likely to stick to that's uncomfortable. So, sticking to goals and things that feel difficult. So
not rewarding yourself with a cigarette or anything.
Well,
absolutely not.
That's it. There you go.
We need to just think about, as Chris was saying, rather than beating ourselves up, what can I do differently now to in line with the principles? I look forward to doing that differently tomorrow. But the research is out there that we can, become more successful at reaching our goals if we do reward ourselves. That might be about buying ourselves a little gift or a treat or something, but it doesn't have to be so extravagant as that, for instance. Yeah. It may just be an affirmation, a positive statement to ourselves. Well done, me. I'm doing really well. Yeah. So letting ourselves know that we're on line with where we want to be in life. Mm-hmm. The benefit will be there, won't it? Because we'll start to feel differently. We'll start to have a more rich and meaningful life, and it just sort of, reinforces itself.
Now, is it true, keep hearing this thing, is it true that it takes 21 days to break or start a habit?
3 weeks, right? We're talking about it takes, let's say.
You can disagree, by the way.
No.
Each other.
I might have to, Chris.
We'll see, 21 days. Right. A habit takes 3 weeks to make and 3 weeks to break. I always use that principle in everything I actually do. And it is actually a fact within that, because you can, I don't know if you agree with that, but in that sense, after that period of time, something kicks in where it's automatic. It's like changing your diet. Your taste buds change and you'll get used to something. It's funny, I actually went through that one time. It's funny you're saying that. I remember saying, no, I wasn't a big fan of salad. I was doing a lot of training and just put salad in it. It's like, all right, I'll eat it. All right, I'll eat it. Then after a while, it was like, where's the salad? Where's the salad?
How do you know that's not because you've heard of this 21-day thing and you just kind of programmed your brain
conditioning.
To think? So maybe it's not actually 21 days, it's just because you thought it might work, so you just...
Right, well, it's funny because...
Am I getting too what's the word? Neuroscientist-y now.
Neurolinguistic. Right, I was thinking about certain people that I've coached as well and used that. And obviously making that statement as well and going along with it. It does actually program you, and you do have to program your mind. All right, so it might be 22 days. But I'll tell you something, within that period...
I could say 10 days and I can build it. What do you think?
It depends on your self-motivation as well, how hard you are on yourself to actually do that within that time. Yeah. But is it a process of like 10 days, I've done the 10 days, I go back to it, right? Because it's something on the outside.
It's not the actual 21 days, it's just the fact that you've set yourself like a...
There's an inherent goal in the goal, isn't there?
There you go.
And I think that's most helpful. So we need to sort of, work towards something and have a vision and all this kind of stuff. But the research tells us that 21, it could be 25, it could be 30, it could be 20 and so forth. So there isn't, a hard and fast rule. And I'd just be wary about that slightly because in a way we're setting expectations as well. So if, on day 22, we go back to our old habits, then we think we failed and we start beating ourselves up and we're not normal and all this kind of stuff. So I think that has a detrimental impact on our confidence and our ability to move forward once again. So I just think we need to be a bit flexible around it. And the research tells us that 21 days isn't hard and fast. We are creatures of habit, and it's just about reinforcement, isn't it? And over 3 weeks, say 21 days, there's a lot of reinforcement that goes on. So indeed, so we're more likely to succeed at that point, but it's not absolutely on 21 days. It's delicate to talk about.
I believe that if the individual has actually heard that and that's been set, they are going to work towards that within the, let's say, 2.5 weeks in. They've actually got a lot of pressure on them in that sense, and you are right, it's a lot of pressure, and if they feel they're going to fail. Yeah. Now, with coaching someone, and between that, and we said, all right, 3 weeks at the end of the day, they've actually got a target, and they're going to try and go for that at the end of the day. And true to earth, you could have said 25 days, and they would have gone for that. Whichever one you say, there's going to be that goal that's going to say, I've got to do it by that time, I've got to do it by that time. Yes, there is a bit that if they come back to you and say, I haven't done it within that time, but you've got to be able to guide them back in there at the same time.
We have a lady as well, as I was saying at the beginning, who's going through a bit of a problem now. She's been setting herself these goals, and because she's not reaching her target, she's feeling pretty down. So I'd like the both of you to stay on till after the break, see what she has to say. I'm going to give my opinion as well, and then I'd like to get your opinion on how we can help her out as well, if that's okay.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah. Okay. So join us after this break, and we're going to be speaking to Layla.